So you are down about 220 pounds in 2.5 years.
Yeah.
That's an incredible story. Hi, everyone. My name's Jay, and I help people with their body breakthroughs. And I'm here with Josh, who I met on TikTok, and he's been through an amazing journey, and he's going to share with us a little bit today about his story as an inspiration to others who don't know exactly how to start on the same path, but really want to make a change. So, Josh, if you want to say a couple things about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. My name's Josh. I live in America. I work in technology for a fairly large, well-known company. And I started really trying to take control of my health maybe about 2.5 years ago. I started at a little over 430 pounds, and I'm around 200, 210 right now. A little bit more to go. I'm sure we'll get into all that, but yeah, a little bit about 2.5 years. So
That's amazing. So I wonder if you would share with us, take us back to the moment that you realized something needed to change.
yeah, so it was actually pretty easy for me to figure out something needed to change. So I got sick with what I thought was like a sinus infection. And I went to the doctor and they gave me typical like Z-Pak or whatever antibiotics, and it didn't help. So then they ratcheted up to like another thing and then another thing. And it was like the strongest antibiotics they could give me over the counter, and nothing was touching it. So I couldn't hear out of my ear. I was having nosebleeds every day. It was really rough. So I went and got tested. And luckily, like, I live in Pittsburgh, and so like Pittsburgh is a really big medical community. There's a lot of like experts on various topics here. And through various tests, they figured out that I had a pretty rare autoimmune disease called granulomatosis with polyangiitis. And so what that basically does is it restricts blood flow to organs. And it also causes like tons of inflammation. And so kind of what made me, it got worse after that initial, like, oh, I think I have a sinus infection. And for most like inflammatory illnesses, like a common thing to do is just load you up on steroids, right? And so like I got up on steroids. And at the time, I think when I first got sick, I was like 320 pounds or 330 pounds. And so, like, fast forward a year later, I'm on like 100 milligrams of prednisone daily for a year, and I went up from 330 to like 430 in like a year. Like, to go up 100 pounds in a year is pretty crazy. And the illness was only getting worse, and so that I can remember the day that I decided I was going to do something about it, because I went in for an MRI of my lungs, and they found out my left lung was almost non-functional because of inflammation in it. But on the report for the MRI, they were like patient barely fits in the machine. And I was like, okay, like that's a problem. And luckily, like that day or the day after that, I also got pneumonia. And so pneumonia, when you have one lung, is terrible, by the way. But I wasn't eating, and like I lost like 30 pounds in like 2 weeks just from like barely eating or not keeping food down. And I was like, well, if I could do that, I wonder how long I could keep this up. I wonder if, because like I went from like 430 to like 399. It was like, well, that's the first time my weight started with a 3 in a while. That'd be pretty cool if we could keep it going. And then I kept it going, obviously. And so like now I'm down to like 200, 210, depending on the day. But yeah, that was the eye opener for me, is like could barely fit in the MRI. That's a problem.
Besides having autoimmune and not fitting in an MRI, what other kinds of challenges do you experience kind of on a daily basis? And I want to hear about the physical challenges, but I also want to hear about the emotional challenges if you can go there.
Yeah, I'll have to think about the emotional one a little bit, because it's been a while. But physically, like there's like kind of two moments. So this happened like over winter. So it's like shoveling the driveway, and like I grew up like pretty blue collar, so I used to have no problem just working my way through any problem. and I'm not even half done shoveling the driveway, and I'm sweating profusely. I could barely breathe, right? And then like after winter, it would get to the point where like a single flight of stairs, I'd feel like really winded. And part of that was like my lungs going down in efficiency. But the other part is just like most people working over COVID, like I worked from home and I sat in, well, not this chair, but a chair in this spot every day for, 8 to 12 hours a day, because I work in tech and I work in escalation. So like there's days where I'd be in my chair 12 hours a day, or even 72 hours straight. At one point, I was basically just rotating in and out of my chair just for like on-call type stuff. And so that it starts to take its toll, especially whenever, like I'll remember a time like pretty early in the journey. This is maybe the first month that I was in it. I was still pretty discouraged. Like I was at a team event when COVID was just ending, and we're going for a walk after we volunteered at a soup kitchen in New York. And like the hotel was only like 3 blocks away, and you would have thought I ran a marathon. Like I'm sweating. I could barely keep up with anybody. And that was just like really embarrassing. And that was tough for me, because these are people that I used to have no problem even being a bigger guy. I could keep up with them, but it's tough. And then like, if they plan like after work activities, like, I remember one time they did like a climbing rope thing, and it was like, I couldn't do it because I was too big or whatever. It's embarrassing, right? I didn't feel like they were doing it to exclude me, but it just happened, and there was nothing really that I could do about it at the point. So, yeah.
Yeah, so you said embarrassing twice. So
Yeah.
feeling like you couldn't keep up on the walk.
Yeah, especially for somebody that's like in their 30s. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people say it's like, oh, you're going through your midlife crisis, but like that should be your prime years, between your 20s and your 30s. But yeah, it was really tough just not being able to keep up with people who were doing stuff and seemed effortless for them, because it was. So yeah, and then, like, disheartening. Like, you have like a self-image of yourself, and it just like things like that make it get worse. You're almost like getting into debt with yourself with the way that you view it. So, getting out of that's important if you're able to do it.
Mm-hmm. And then you also mentioned like feeling excluded, maybe not intentionally.
I generally feel like most people aren't, at least like I said, the people that I interact with, they're not trying to be exclusionary. Just sometimes it happens, and, you can feel it whether they intended to do it or not.
Right.
So,
yeah, it can still hurt, even if you know it's not on purpose.
Yeah.
You mentioned when you weren't eating for a couple of weeks, you got down to 399.
Yeah.
And you said to yourself, I wonder how long I can keep this going.
Yeah.
So what happened next in the story?
Okay. So this is usually where I pick it up, because our conversation that we're having right now is not unique. I've had dozens of people, like especially at work, like I'll not work with them for a while, and then we'll get on a video call like we're having right now, and they'll go, "Oh my God, you look so different. I didn't realize it was you." Or I meet them in person after it's been a couple of years, and they're like, "I really didn't recognize you." My wife does this from time to time. She was picking me up somewhere. I was dropping my car off to get the tire changed.
Yeah.
She was like, "I drove past you twice. I didn't recognize you."
It's hilarious.
Which is kind of funny. But a lot of people then follow that up with like, "Oh, can I get a little bit of your time? I'd love to get started. I wish I could lose blah, blah,
yeah.
blah pounds," right? So I've had this conversation dozens of times. But so what did I do next? So the biggest thing I would say is it's super easy for people to just go like off the deep end. And then as soon as you do that, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. And so like for me, it was like small changes. So the biggest thing I did at first was just started counting my calories. And it wasn't even like counting them to try to get below or above a certain number or target. It was just count them for awareness. And so I did that for a couple of weeks. And the sheer act of like observing something, this happens in physics too, right? With light rays and
That's
things
right.
like that.
Yeah.
You observe something, it acts differently. And so the sheer act of you deciding to observe this, you're going to act differently. So it's not a true test, but you're going to start becoming aware of like how many calories are in things, like ignoring all the other macros and junk that's in it. You start to do this. Is super annoying for my family because I'll be like, oh, I'm not going to eat that because it's got a lot of calories in it. They're like, but a Blizzard is delicious, and I don't deny it. A Blizzard is delicious, right? But
Yeah.
so like, I always tell people like, don't do anything. Just count your calories for the first, I don't know, 2 to 4 weeks, right? So I did that, and it was like, when I was around 400 pounds or 399 pounds, my daily caloric like limit was really high, and I didn't really need to change so much. It was just like I eat less. I could have whatever I wanted, but I just couldn't have as much as I wanted. And so like getting control of that first was huge. And then I always tell people like, okay, then I really set with the like learning how calorie deficits work. And like if I could tell anybody to do any one thing, it's just like learn how a calorie deficit works, and you can control your weight, positive or negative, whether you're trying to grow or lose weight or maintain. Like if you do that, that was huge for me. So I use an app, Lose It. It's like one of the more popular ones. Most people know it. They had a sale. It was like get a year premium for $20. I'm like, sure, whatever.
It's a good investment.
Yeah. And it guides you through it. And so it's like, hey, what's your height? What's your weight? What's your like gender you align with? What's your activity level? And it basically says like, here's a couple plans you could follow. And so the one that I did was like lower calories Monday through Friday, higher calories Saturday and Sunday. And so it's like every Saturday and Sunday I had a little bit more to deal with. And during the week I had a little bit less. And so in the beginning, I eased into it. So I was only eating like average 2,500 a day, 2,700 a day on weekends. And you have to reduce that over time as you lose weight, obviously. But that was like really easy for me to keep up with. And so like, I just did that. And I got to the point where like I could plan out my meals, and I could like almost by sight, although this is terrible advice, like tell what something is going to be calorie wise, be like, oh, that's at least,
no, I don't think
at
that's
least
terrible advice.
500 or at least 700, right? Most people are bad at estimating, but, so I like, a bag of chips is usually 150 calories if it's a smaller one. So like you could figure out, but that leads you to start doing things like, eating for volume. So
Yeah.
like, there's a whole like subreddit on Reddit called like volume eating, and it's awesome because people share these recipes. It's like you
need to
get this
check that out.
gigantic salad bowl of food. It's like 400 calories. Cool.
Yeah.
But you'll learn like where people go wrong, right? Like sauces, drinks. Those are your usual culprits. Like a plate full of like barbecue sauce or something like that could be a ton of calories, or yum sauce if you're doing hibachi or whatever. So like I switched to just drinking no or low calorie drinks, low calorie sauces, sugar-free stuff. And like that can be a little bit of a, like you can make it fun because you'll spend a lot of time figuring out a lot of low calorie, low carb, low sugar stuff tastes like garbage.
Yeah.
But eventually you'll find some stuff that's good. And
Yeah,
so you
for
can
sure.
kind of put together your Avengers squad of like good tasting foods that are low calorie.
We always have like 6 sauces on rotation that are 0 calorie.
Yeah. And like anytime a new one comes out, like I'll pretty much, it's an instant buy for me. I just came back from Costco. I bought a ton of low calorie stuff, but like, so I did that. And the first year I did that, like just that, I lost like 100, 110 pounds, just cutting calories, right?
Yeah. That's amazing.
In the second year, it was slowing down, right? So I was down to like 300, 330, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, all right, I'm going to try to maybe start going for bike rides. So I bought a bike, right? And went off on like a bike side quest for a while. And I was biking every weekend, like 3-4 hours, trails, mountain bike. I got like the dual suspension thing. I hurt myself a ton of times. It was a lot of fun. But it was like raining every weekend. And that's when I rode. And so I was like, all right, I'm just going to get a gym membership so I can ride a stationary bike there. And that was kind of the end for me because I really fell in love with weightlifting. So I've been weightlifting a lot for the past year and a half. 5 to 7 days a week without fail. The only time I don't is like if I'm on a legitimate vacation. I travel for work pretty often, and I pick hotels that have gyms specifically, just to make sure that I'm not skipping, and that's been a lot of fun for me. And so like I think that took me maybe 6 months, and then 6 months into that, I got into running, and like now I've been running for, well, in the beginning I ran 5 days a week, but I'm only doing 3 to 5 now because I'm on like a training plan, and that's what it calls for. But I remember that first run, I was like, I did 5K and it was like 47 minutes, and I was like, wow, that's slow as hell.
That's like me right now.
But it's like you're still like, I know that's like a common, like you're passing everybody that's on the couch.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like, I just took an iPad with me and I went to the treadmill and I just did as much as I could, and I caught up on movies. And so for like
Nice.
2 or 3 months, it was just like I blasted through. I want to say like 5 to 10 full series, beginning to end, just watching shows on there. And then one day I couldn't make it to the gym, and I was like, I'm gonna run outside. And I ran outside, and it was like that was actually enjoyable. And I ran the entire time without stopping, 5K. And so then I went on like we'll call it the running side quest. Like I was still lifting every day, but I was getting faster. And so like after 6 months of running, I was able to do my first sub 30 5K. That was on my, I made a goal to like walk or run 100 5Ks in a year. And I ended up doing it in like 7 months, which was really cool. I did it. I remember I was out of town. I was in Albany for a friend's wedding, and I went on my 100th run. It was my 100th run that I hit my first sub 30 on. It was 29:42.
Wow. Such a cool story.
Yeah, it was really fun. So I was out in Albany, got a good run in. But I ended up doing like 152 5Ks last year. And then I ran in my first actual race. I got the time right there. It was actually 28:08 was my first real race.
And that's like almost one 5K every other day.
Oh, I was doing I only ever do 5Ks.
Yeah. Wow.
So like that's just a me thing. It was like I was interested, but I never do less than a 5K. It's always like, if you look at my Strava or whatever, it's like 3.11 miles, 3.11, 3.11. And now I'm training for a half marathon in September.
Nice.
But like those are just kind of like some of the side quests I've been off on. But it's always like it kind of ebbs and flows. It's like this month I'm really into lifting, that month I'm really into running, and they play well off of each other. But
Well, let me ask you this. Training for half marathon and doing 155 Ks last year, what would you say to your current self, to your former self?
yeah.
If you had to say maybe like a piece of advice or like some encouragement.
So the number one thing that I don't even have to say that I would say to myself, but like say it to somebody else is, there's days where you're going to screw it up, but like if you zoom out and look on like a chart, like just being consistent over time is the most important thing you can do, right? Like if you were going to cut down a forest, you're not going to do it in one day. Not that you should be cutting down forest, but like you're not going to do it one day, but you do it one tree at a time, right? Or like people that like crochet, right? You're going to do it one stitch at a time. And that's like kind of the thing that's important here. Like there's days that I went way over on my calories. And so like I learned mentally, like, okay, I look at the week now. I don't look at a day. I look at the whole week.
Yeah.
And whenever I have to travel for work, I look at a 2-week period, because traveling always throws it off because I don't have any control over where we go.
Mm-hmm.
But that really helps. So it's really just like, if you stick with it, you're going to get what you're looking for. And so I tell that to people all the time. And it's been great, right? Like, so like my illness is relatively under control. I mean, a lot of that's medication, but like, we just say like, stick with it and you're going to feel a lot better. Right. And so, I absolutely feel a lot better. I mean, it adds a lot of like extra stress to my life that I would prefer not to have had.
Sure.
But, yeah, just like the consistency thing. It's, if there's any one thing, just like sticking with it, stay on like trust the process, that kind of thing. But,
Well, can you share a moment maybe over the last 2 years where you felt like giving up? And then what did you do to keep going?
Yeah. Okay, so January and February of last year was really difficult for me because it was when I first really ran into the I've stopped losing weight
Hmm.
quickly mark, right? Like it was like shedding off rapidly in the beginning. And whenever like January, February, I think I was around like 280, well, maybe February, it was like 285. Um, and it was slowing down. And I felt like, oh God, I've been at this weight now for like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. It's not moving, right? And I was like, okay, I got to do something. And like that was tough for me. I was pretty close to giving up. I remember I had 2 or 3 days in a row, and this has never happened since or before, like 3 days in a row where I was over on calories because I was just like, there's no point to this. I'm just going to eat what I want. I'm just going to be
Wow.
happy. Luckily, like I snapped out of it, but it was like, that was the hardest part. And the thing that snapped me out of it was the number on the scale is not the only number you should be watching. And so
That's
like,
right.
I'm like a super like data driven guy. Like I said, I work for
Yeah,
a tech
it helps a
company.
lot.
We're super data driven, right? And a lot of us are like this, but no one metric runs anything into the ground. It's like a complication of metrics together that say like think something is going negatively or poorly. So I added to my metrics then. So like I started
That's
being
cool.
I got out a tape measure and I was like measuring like my waist, my chest, my arms, my forearms, my legs, my calves, right? And I realized like my muscle mass is probably way up from all the lifting, right? And I always tell people like, I was like 400 pounds. I was like deadlifting 400 pounds every day when I got out of bed, right? Um,
Yeah.
but it was like, so like measuring things. So I got like a Bluetooth tape measure and it records them over time so I can
Oh,
track
that's
it.
cool.
They're only like $15-$20. My wife got it
I've
for me
never
as
heard
a
of that
gift.
before.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Wow.
And then I got like a scale that automatically tracked my weight. And so it was like, okay, that was kind of motivating. And then I also got a food scale. I think that's when I started getting really into like weighing things because what I realized was like the portions they put on like a bag of food for a serving, they're nowhere near accurate, right? It'll just be like, eat this bag. It's 170 calories, but they'll tell you it's like something grams, right? If you weigh the food, you'll find out you're either way under or way over. Like those bags are nowhere near accurate, and so like that started to like let me eat more of other things. Like I started like really eating more protein, but I realized like, oh, I bet I could go down a shirt size, right? And like when I started, I was a 5X, and I remember I love going to live concerts, and so I went to a concert, and it was like the first time I could buy a shirt that didn't have that summer, not obviously in January, February. That summer, I bought a shirt that didn't start with an X. It was like my first large shirt in
What an
years.
amazing feeling.
Yeah, that was awesome. So I went from like a
Yeah.
5X to like a large. Some cuts are different than others, but then like I went from a size 48 pant to a size 34 I'm in now, and I'm probably pretty
Wow.
close to 32. That's cool, right? And so like there's
Yeah,
all these other
it really
numbers
is.
that can be like motivators. And so like if one thing looks like it's off, if you have all these other things to go, it can tell you that you're either trending in the right or the wrong way. And just because like your weight stays stagnant, what I found was I went and got one of these things called a DEXA scan. I don't know if you know what they are,
Yeah,
but like
I do, but most people won't.
yeah, for other people, like it basically scans your body, tells you what your actual muscle mass is, what your actual body fat percentage is. And like I don't think BMI is a healthy number to follow most of the
Yeah,
time. It's meant
most
to
of the
like
time.
it's for a population, right? And
Exactly.
so like a BMI is good for a population, but it's not good for an individual, right?
Right. Well said.
So like the DEXA thing's awesome, and I really wish I'd done a couple of things. So one, I wish I
I
had gotten
know.
one whenever I was very first starting. The second thing I wish I did was I did more before pictures because I have to like find them in the
Yes.
wild, right? And I did more intentionally done them because now it's like, oh, I have to like struggle to find before and after pictures. But So I wish I'd done that, but I did a DEXA scan and it was like, oh, your muscle mass is like this. And I'm like, well, it definitely wasn't that before. Like, and we knew some of this because of the MRI. Um, but that was like really encouraging, right?
Yeah.
And so like I knew I was generally getting fitter. And like mass moves mass. So like I couldn't leg press as much as I could before, mostly because I wasn't carrying that weight around all the time. But I saw my lifts all going up, and it was like those numbers matter, right? Like I'm strong. Like the first time I bench pressed like 225, it was like, oh, that's an achievement, right? First time I deadlifted like 3 plates and then 4 plates, like that was a big achievement. And so like those numbers were all trending up. So just because one number was going down, like, is that the end of everything? No, it absolutely isn't. It's not even like a thing that matters. And so like I had all these other numbers that said, the measurements that you want to go down are going down and the measurements that you want to go up are going up. Like, why are you so worried about this one thing? And I realized like I cared about fat loss, not weight loss.
Yeah.
So like if my muscle's going up, like that's weight I'm happy to carry around. Right.
Yeah.
So like that was a big like kind of light bulb moment for me. That's one that I feel like people kind of have to learn for themselves. Like I can tell somebody about it, but till they're in that rut, they're not going to really get the gravity of it.
A lot of people are mastered by the number on the scale, and it will dictate their entire day.
Yeah, absolutely. There was another trick that somebody told me to do was like stop counting in pounds and switch to like kilos, right? Switch to metric. And it was like, do that for your runs too. And it was like, oh, you're kind of like, you're cutting your mental ties to like a number that you've known your whole life, and you're switching to a new number system.
It's no longer emotionally tied.
Yeah, it worked for me for running. It didn't work for the weight, mostly because I was so used to like what kilos actually were from like lifting weights in the gym. But for running, I was like, oh, this is my mile time. Oh, I did a 5K. Oh, it was like 6 minutes for a kilometer. Oh, okay, cool, easy. Is that good? I don't know. We'll just keep doing it, right? Stick with
6.
it.
Let's try to get better.
Right. Yeah. So it was, that was another little trick, but it's no one number really dominates progress. It's like the collection of everything together tells you if you're going in the right direction or not. So like that was a really big eye-opening moment for me.
So you were down about 220 pounds when did that journey start for you?
It was about 2.5 years ago. So I started actually losing in August of 2022. That's what I was like intentionally starting. It's kind of at the tapered end of COVID. It was still kind of there, but things were starting to lightening up. But yeah, so from August to now, so it's been about 2.5 years.
So 220 pounds in 2.5 years.
Yeah.
That's an incredible story.
Yeah, and I don't even know what my max weight actually was at the beginning,
Yeah.
because like I never weighed myself. I knew I was at least 430 pounds.
Maybe 2 things. What's next for you? And to anyone who's listening and saying to themselves, yeah, sure, Josh did that, but that could never work for me, what would you say? So there's 2 questions there.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll start with the last one and then I'll go to the first one. So, so for people that are saying like, oh, he did that, but I didn't, I am not unique. I have heard this from other people dozens of times. And so one that I would say is this was my route because of my autoimmune disease, I was on immunosuppressants. I was originally going to get gastric bypass. There's no shame in that. Like if that is your route to victory, do that. There's no shame in any of like the drugs or like Ozempic or Mounjaro. Like just do it with the like observation of a health professional. Obviously, don't get any of those shady like fly by night pills that they'll ship you on the internet. It's one of the things that I would say, like, if you stick with it, whatever route you take, the consistency is the thing that'll drive it home. And do not compare yourself to somebody else. Whether you're going to do running or losing weight or lifting or whatever, compare yourself against yourself. And as long as that trend is continuing to go where you want it to go, that's fine. Not everybody is the same, right? Like I can run with a friend, and he burns less calories than me because he's fitter, he's more in shape. I'm shorter, I'm heavier, he's taller, he's leaner. A stride for him is different than a stride for me. We both did the same distance. Comparing ourselves to each other is not going to be helpful. So that's fine. Other people have limitations. Like I had a health issue that I had to overcome. I would have had progress faster if both of my lungs were functioning in the beginning.
Yeah.
So like if you have muscular issues or even attention issues or like energy issues, like there's any number of things that can throw off the way a person's body works. Like those are unique to you. That's why it's not helpful to compare yourself to someone else. But just sticking through it over a long period of time, it might take you 1 year, might take you 2, it might take you 4, or even longer. Just sticking with it is the important thing. As far as what's next for me, I really want to get down to about 185. And so like it's slow going now for me because I'm training for a half marathon. And so for anybody who's ever done one of those, you know, you are constantly having to keep your body fueled for runs, right? So it's hard
as you should
in a real deficit,
right?
And a half is nowhere near as intensive as a full marathon, but so I'm running that in September, and just the deficit is hard to keep up with. But I'm going to try to do that under 2 hours. And so like what's next for me is I'm doing still a lot of like long run on the weekend, a couple easy runs and a speed run every week. And that's my general training plan. My goal is to hit a goal for this year is to hit the 1,000-pound club for weightlifting by the end of the year. So that's between squat, bench, deadlift, they all add up to 1,000 pounds. I'm pretty close. The squat's the only thing that's throwing me for a loop. I can bench 225. I can deadlift 405. It's the squat I got to get to fill the gap, right?
You'll get there, yeah.
And I'll get it, right? So I'm not too worried about that. But that's a big goal for me. When I hit the weight loss goal, I got to try to time it right because since I lost weight so fast, I have a lot of loose skin. And so like, I'm actually not too self-conscious about it for the most part. But like my stomach and my chest, they're a mess. And so like when I get to that target, I'm probably going to look into like getting that fixed. And the interesting thing is that'll probably make me lose a few more pounds, somewhere between, depends on the person, like 3 to 20 pounds. I'm guessing I'm probably around 5, maybe 7 of just skin. Right. So yeah. And so like, that'll be cool. After that, it's really just maintain. I might go back to doing jiu-jitsu. I really used to love Brazilian jiu-jitsu maybe 10, 15 years ago. Somewhere on my shelf of collections behind me is second place from like a no holds barred grappling tournament that I went to. I used to like that. And I really, really liked that. It was a lot of fun. Good place to meet friends. It's really just like kind of maintaining. So like I just hit 40 a couple weeks ago. So, I don't know, live longer, right? Like when I first did the, like they did like the heart and lung function test where they put like the gear all on your face and make you go on a treadmill. They were like, you kind of have the fitness age of like a 62-year-old smoker.
Wow.
Right?
That had to be bad to hear.
Now I've got like the fitness age of like a 32-year-old.
Yeah.
I'm 40, which is really cool.
You lost like 30 years of age.
Yeah. It's like, okay, maybe I'll live a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Which is cool. So like I'm actually actively really trying to plan out what retirement is like for me. And I really want to retire early. And like we'll call it a soft retirement, but I always joke with everybody like I want to do the typical thing where I retire and move to Florida, but like I want to go like work at Disney World and just like have fun telling puns on the riverboat cruise or something like that.
Yeah.
And I might be able to pull that off by the time I'm like 50, 55, depending on if the stock market could go the other direction for a while. That would be great. Yeah, it's just like one of those things. Like past hitting some of those fitness goals, I really don't know what's next, but I think I might like to get back into jujitsu. I always joke about taking like a medieval sword fighting class because there's a group near me that does like Ren Fair type sword fighting, and it was like that's just dangerous enough that it could be fun.
Yeah.
I did whitewater rafting last year and I almost died, so like I'm not gonna do that again. But
Yeah.
that was fun. But like just do more stuff like that where it might be interesting. But yeah, I got 2 kids. One's in college. They're gonna graduate probably in the next 2 years, and then I got another one that's gonna graduate high school in the next 3 years,
Wow.
and then they'll
That's
head off to
amazing.
college. So
And you're going to be around much longer for them.
oh yeah, absolutely. Might follow them around. Depends on where they want to go. They got their heart set on an Ivy League, so that I also need the stock market to go up for that. That's not cheap. That's like the one dig the financial advisors say it is like, yeah, so you're woefully unprepared to pay for an Ivy League school. Like, yeah, I know that, right?
Yeah, I already know. Aren't we all?
Yeah, aren't we all? So they're like, hey, you better make sure they get good grades. I'm like, yeah, they will, right? Like, but yeah, those are kind of the big things for me. Is really just do that. I think we talked about this a little bit before, like leading up to this. It's just like getting better at managing my stress around work. Work a stressful job. I work at Amazon. I think I said that before, but and I'm a senior manager, so I have a team of like right now like 60 people, 55, 60 people that report to me. That changes. Sometimes it goes up, it goes down, depending on like what's happening at work. But that can be stressful. It's one of those jobs where you're always on call, and you work with like nothing but like type A personalities. So it's like dealing with the stress of people that are always mentally on and engaged, and the emails never stop coming. Like just figuring out how to deal with that stress is it's an ever evolving lesson that I'm learning. When the workday is done, it's done. Like learning how to flip that switch. I was really bad at it the first couple of years that I was here, constantly thinking like, oh, I need to be available 24/7, and the reality is nothing's really that important. And if it is, like, they'll page me. I've got a pager set up for a reason, paging app. And I don't need to be constantly like looking at my email, like waiting for the next thing to be on top of to like impress everybody with. But it's it's a high stress workplace, and it's got a reputation for being that. But like learning how to mature through that is like,
Yeah, right. This has been such a great experience for me, and you've just really been vulnerable and shared a lot of difficult stuff, and I really appreciate your time and sharing your thoughts.
Yeah, always happy to. If anybody has any questions, happy to. I don't know. I'm on TikTok under the Cult of Chaos with a K. But hey, always willing to talk to people, whether it's about work or not. Like if you go to my page, I intentionally make it not about any one thing. It's just like a accurate representation of who I am. Like one day you might get, I don't know, me shredding on a guitar. Another day might be, I don't know, I collect vinyl records, so it might be vinyls. Another one might be talking about the intricacies of hiring 200 plus people in 6 months over COVID or something like that. But yeah, whatever. I don't know. I intentionally keep it diversified because I don't want it to be about any one thing. But always happy to
I like
talk
that.
to
You
people.
just
Yeah.
you let your personality shine through.
Yeah, absolutely.